Hey everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to find the standard deviation and variance for data on a TI-84. I'm going to show you how to do it both for raw data and for group data. We'll start with the raw data, and in this case, we need to go stat, enter, and put our data in a list. I'm going to clear out our data from our last video here. And we're just going to type those numbers in. So 1, 2, 3, 3, 6, 6, 6, 7, 8. Once my data is in, I press stat. I go over to calc and I press 1 var stats and I tell it that I put my data in list 1. I don't have a frequency list, so I go down to calculate and press enter. And you can see that it's got 2 standard deviations. It has an SX and a sigma X. Unless you are specifically told that you are looking for a population standard deviation, assume you are looking at sample data. 99.9% of the time in this class, we are looking for S, not sigma. So I want to copy down that 2.6853 blah, blah, blah. Because my data is whole numbered, I need to copy this down to the 10th place. So I'm going to write this as 2.7. 2.68 rounds up to 2.7. When I go to find my variance, which is Sx squared, I should not square the 2.7. I should square the original decimal. There are 2 ways to do this. You can copy down that big long decimal and then retype it on your home screen. I don't know about you, I'm lazy. I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count on the fact that the TI-84 is going to store this decimal in the SX memory slot until I rerun 1 var stats. So if I go second quit to get to home screen, all I need to do is pull up that SX variable. So I'm going to press vars. I'm going to tell it I want statistics variables. And I'm going to select SX from the menu. I'm then going to press the squared button to square that. And you'll notice that it spits out 7.211111. So my variance is 7.2. If we square the standard deviation that we rounded, you'll notice that we get a value that's close. It got the first decimal place right, 7.2, but then it's 7.29 because we rounded 2.68 something 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 up to a slightly larger 2.7, giving us a slightly larger variance when we square it. Your textbook will give you that 7.21111. It is using the unrounded standard deviation to find the variance. Please note that I did this same thing on your test. I left a little bit of wiggle room. So on your test, if the answer is supposed to be 7.2, there's plus or minus a range of error that accounts for this. But you should be using the unrounded decimal and squaring that. We don't want to round until the last step of the calculation. So we don't round until after we've squared. All right, so let's try that same thing for grouped data. I'm going to go back to the group data that we were using in the last few videos. So we've got class limits, class boundaries, frequency, and we know when we calculate one variable statistics for grouped data, I need midpoint and frequency. In our mean video, I showed you how to calculate that using an extra 2 columns. Lower limits in L1, upper limits in L2, and then you enter a formula for L3. So 1, enter 6, enter 11, enter 16, enter 21, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, And then we go up to the L3 label and we enter the formula parentheses L1 plus L2 to take the first lower limit, the second upper limit, add them, divide by 2 to find the value halfway between. And that gives us our midpoints. We then go over to the next list and enter those frequencies. And we run one var stats. This time, we do have a frequency list. Our midpoints are in list 3. Our frequencies are in list 4. You'll see it gave us that 10.2 mean we saw before. It also gives us a standard deviation, SX, of 6.1 something something. And it's a 6.13. So I'm rounding it down to 6.9. To find variance, we do the same thing we did for raw data. We go back to that home page, we go vars, we go statistics, we select SX, and we square it. And this time it gives us a very different number. I called the same variable, but it now has that new 6.1 stored in its memory. And so it's giving us 37.7 rounded for our variance. If I square that rounded decimal I wrote, I get something fairly close, 37.21. So as soon as we run one var stats again, we change what was stored in memory for SX. Every time we run one var stats, it's going to overwrite what's in memory for those variables. All right, so that's how we find standard deviation and variance using a TI-84. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.